Thank you very much, Khenpo, for your truly wonderful and insightful speech. Now we will transition into the interactive Q&A session.
First of all, I want to express my sincere thanks for your truly excellent speech. I listened very carefully to your teachings, which have provided me with a much deeper perspective on these important matters. In my view, it seems that there is a significant issue of gender discrimination within the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. When we examine the institutional structures, it becomes apparent that compared to women, men seem to have more advantages and opportunities for advancement. For my second question, I would like to know what the teachings and perspective of Tibetan Buddhism are regarding the topic of homosexuality. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your wisdom.
The situation is actually like this. In fact, Tibetan Buddhism views both men and women with complete equality. This is because within the fundamental exoteric teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, it is held that both men and women are fully capable of observing the sacred precepts. Then, when it comes to the practice of Vajrayana, there is a very specific precept in Vajrayana Buddhism, which is that one must never slander or insult women. This is a truly special and unique precept. But apart from this one rule, I don't think I've ever seen any phenomenon in Tibetan Buddhism where men are considered superior to women, or where there is a preference for men over women. Such things do not exist in Buddhism. But has it actually existed throughout history? Among the ordinary people, it very well might have, because whether in the East or the West, or even across Africa, in many different places, throughout the long history of humanity before the 20th century, there were basically many phenomena of inequality. That's the first issue. The second major issue is about the nature of desire itself. Whether it's desire for the opposite sex or for the same sex, in the exoteric Buddhist scriptures, this is widely regarded as an unreasonable affliction. Therefore, in the Buddhist scriptures, including in the Sutra of Right Mindfulness of the Dharma, it is clearly stated that such unreasonable intentions are not good whether they arise toward the same sex or the opposite sex, and there are prohibitions against them. Then, when it comes to the highest levels of Vajrayana Buddhism, desire is regarded as discriminating wisdom. Its true nature is wisdom. There are such teachings as well. So within Buddhism itself, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is no particular rejection of homosexuality. However, in traditional Tibetan society, homosexuality is generally very difficult to accept. Because of history and their overall way of life, people in the past also found it difficult to accept. Even now, if the topic comes up, such as the current international trend of same-sex marriage and the legalization of homosexuality, within a wide variety of traditional Tibetan culture, people still find it extremely rare and hard to accept. I have also spoken with some Tibetans about this, telling them that in some countries today, same-sex marriage is legal, and they find it absolutely unbelievable, saying, "No way, no way." No matter what, there's just nothing that can be done about it. Tibetan region is a relatively closed-off world, so among the general public, it may be very hard for them to accept it.
If you don't mind me asking, are Taoism and Buddhism essentially the same thing?
There are a few notable similarities between Taoism and Buddhism. For instance, in the classic text of the Tao Te Ching, shared ideas clearly appear. The Tao Te Ching says, the one gives birth to two, two gives birth to three, three gives birth to all things. In this way, all phenomena can arise from the state of emptiness. Furthermore, in Taoist philosophy, there is the essential principle of the union of yin and yang, where these two forces interact to create universal balance. This perspective is also quite similar in some respects to other traditions. However, when it comes to deep questions regarding past and present lives, Buddhism probably discusses these complex topics much more extensively than most. For example, Buddhism provides a very detailed framework through what are known as the 5 great treatises. The 5 great treatises are the main focus of our current Buddhist education system. Buddhism is not just Buddhism. In fact, it encompasses a lot. If we study it, whether it's psychology or law, as well as the macro world, the micro world, and so on, there are so many principles involved. We might only realize this after we start learning. So when we look at both the breadth and the depth of these paths, there may be many significant differences. I truly rejoice in the many dedicated Taoist practitioners who go into long-term seclusion deep in the mountains to focus on their practice. I genuinely and deeply rejoice in this. It is just that, indeed, when we look at the specific traditions within Buddhism, I've now studied Buddhism for about 30 years or so, but during this long and steady process, I truly and deeply feel that Buddhism can be integrated quite effectively with many diverse aspects of modern science today. If you decide to specialize in this fascinating area of study in the future, for example, consider the Abhidharmakosha in Buddhism. It is a profound text that explains the entirety of the universe in extensive and meticulous detail. Then Buddhist medicine is consistent with our understanding of physiology and the intricate nature of human biology. The Madhyamaka philosophy in Buddhism shares many striking and profound similarities with the complex subtleties of modern quantum mechanics. Additionally, the Kalachakra Tantra in the Buddhist tradition provides a detailed explanation of the fundamental principles of astronomy and celestial bodies very clearly. And there are also topics like our past lives, our present lives, and many other similar things. In these respects, Buddhism is not just a single scripture, or one comprehensive and singular treatise that summarizes the full scope of its foundational philosophies. According to various distinct doctrinal schools, its content is actually remarkably intricate and complex.
First of all, I would like to thank you for your wonderful and insightful lecture. Right here in South Africa, within this truly incredibly diverse and vibrant multicultural social environment of ours, there are many different languages, diverse races, and different cultural backgrounds. So my question to you is, could you give us some helpful advice on how to proceed? Is it perhaps because every one of us originates from such incredibly diverse and unique cultural backgrounds, bringing with us a vast array of distinct traditions and values that shape how we interact with the complex world around us? We are sincerely hoping that you can provide us with some practical and effective ways to better manage our conduct and behavior in our everyday lives. How would you respond to this?
I believe that as human beings living in this world, when we reflect back at our long history, we see that sometimes religious conflicts have left us with painful and enduring scars, and sometimes the differences in skin color have brought us profound sorrow and suffering. And sometimes, because of the divisions between different countries, we are left with a profound and heavy sense of sadness. Sometimes, when we reflect upon the long course of human history, it is extraordinarily violent and extremely bloody. Although we humans are a highly intelligent form of life, because of our inherently selfish and self-serving hearts, the history we have left behind is not particularly glorious or honorable. For the sake of minerals, for power, for our own interests, we may have committed all kinds of killings, as well as various forms of abuse and plundering and so on. This has happened both in the East and the West. The message that I want to leave with everyone is simply this: you should treat yourself just as you treat others, and treat others exactly as you treat yourself. We should treat other people simply as others, and view ourselves exactly as we are. If we treat ourselves as others, a lot of our unnecessary vanity or arrogance and pride will be reduced. Consequently, our mental afflictions will naturally begin to decrease. When we truly begin to treat others exactly as ourselves, this is called exchanging self and others, or putting oneself in another's place. That is to say, we can understand many of the pains and feelings of others. If we treat others as others, we leave a certain space for them. Whether it's your immediate family members or other people you know, others should have their own space. We shouldn't think, you belong to me. If we think this way, even families will experience a lot of pain. So treat others as others. As for treating yourself as yourself, we should do what we are supposed to do ourselves. We should take responsibility for what we are supposed to bear ourselves. We can't always rely on others because these are our own matters. If we approach things in this way, then people of different religions and different skin colors will all resonate and share a sense of compassion. Gradually, this will also bring great benefit to world peace.
Master, I am very happy to have the opportunity to meet with you here today. I have a question I would like to ask. There are many various schools and traditions within Buddhism. Our Tibetan Buddhism is a very important and deeply profound tradition. I would truly like to know, within our Tibetan Buddhism, do we emphasize the actual process or the final result? To put it more clearly and specifically, when we look at the various different Buddhist schools, they teach us to recite the Buddha's name and practice Buddhism, so that ultimately when we pass away we can go to the Pure Land or attain Buddhahood. So in our Tibetan Buddhist tradition, is it ultimately for this final result or is it for the process itself?
Whether we are talking about Tibetan Buddhism or other religions, there are many different schools of thought and diverse traditions, and this variety is very necessary for growth. This complexity is found not only in our religion, but it is also reflected in modern psychology, as well as in the fields of philosophy and anthropology today. Every single discipline and every subject has a wide variety of schools of thought. Each school has its own unique ideas, and these ideas have different origins and underlying reasons, which ultimately lead to different outcomes. So in Tibetan Buddhism, we also have different schools of thought. Of course, if there are schools in other branches of Buddhism, we believe that we should value both the process and the result. Because in Mahayana Buddhism, one generally first gives rise to bodhicitta and then reaches the spiritual fruition of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva means someone who courageously benefits all sentient beings. And a Buddha is one who is awakened. The highest level of awakening in life is called Buddha, which means the awakened one. So what does one do after awakening? It is to benefit all sentient beings. Therefore, the entire process cannot really be summed up in a single sentence. In fact, at the root of every school, the ultimate goal is to generate meaningful benefits for humanity and every single sentient being. This is, ultimately, the fundamental meaning of Buddhism. Therefore, it is possible that all the different schools, though taking different paths, arrive at the same destination. At the deepest and most fundamental level, they all strive to seek out the ultimate truth in some way, and ultimately they aim to bring happiness and joy to all of humanity and every living being on this earth. I believe this is the case. So in this process, I also hope that many young people, regardless of different sects, whether religious or otherwise, can try to learn as much as possible about other areas, as this may be important. In the past, I dared to approach religions other than Buddhism. Later, I met people of various faiths. This includes the scientific community, believers and non-believers alike. Ultimately, many shared very reasonable points. Therefore, broadening our horizons in this meaningful way can greatly enrich our lives. Perhaps we can strive to live more openly and embrace the world with a renewed sense of wonder, and our path in life will become significantly more expansive and broad.
Thank you very much indeed. We have benefited a great deal from this. What Khenpo discussed today is a point I often share in my own teachings and discussions with students. It is important to recognize that Buddhism is a vast and multifaceted tradition, rather than being limited to a single perspective. For instance, Tibetan Buddhism is simply one specific branch within the broader global Buddhist landscape that exists today. Looking at it from another perspective, Khenpo can see from the students' questions. It is clear that they are all exceptionally critical thinkers, which stems from our intensive and regular classroom training sessions. Thank you so much once again. I am absolutely delighted to have listened to your very insightful lecture today. I also hope that everyone can connect again soon. Wish everyone a pleasant day.